Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
Meet Namely, the all-in-one HR, payroll, and benefits software employees love to use. Clock in, schedule vacation, and more from your desk or on the go. Plus, use the social feed to share company news and give shout-outs for a job well done. Over 1,000 companies use Namely every day. Get a free demo by visiting namely.com/crime.
Crime.
That's namely.com/crime. Build a better workplace with Namely.
Finding the time to get a lab test, it's almost impossible.
Possible!
But right now, it's easy to order the tests you want at everlywell.com. Everlywell is an at-home health testing company that offers a variety of physician-reviewed private tests, from food sensitivity to metabolism to thyroid.
Thyroid!
No more sitting in waiting rooms or waiting on your results. Head to everlywell.com and use the promo code CRIME to take 15% off your first order. Everlywell. Your test on your time, on your terms. I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the podcast about other podcasts and also about true crime, pop culture, journalism. And this week, the CBC's Missing and Murdered looks at the unusual case of a Native family looking for their sister, who was taken from their home and died somewhere in the U.S. 40 years ago. Join me to dive into that case and a whole lot more is my true crime co-author and real-life husband, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
I have the power!
He-Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
What does Aquaman say? I don't know. So I went with He-Man instead.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, licensed private investigator, former defense investigator, and queen of outrage, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello. What am I outraged about now?
You're always outraged about something. Come on.
I am. The cable company, the snow, yeah.
And also with us is the acclaimed novelist behind the City trilogy and podcasting's greatest of all time, Doubting Thomas, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
It's nice to talk to you all, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to be talking about next week so you can be filled in on that, and our listeners can as well. Next week, we're going to be talking about a documentary series called Wild Wild Country on Netflix. It is the super weird story of a super weird cult that took over an Oregon town in the 1970s. And Kevin and I started watching it, and that's what we're going to be talking about next week.
Is it the Rajneeshis?
Yes. You know about the Rajneeshis, Toby?
Yes, I do. There's a big, 2-part New Yorker article about them back in the 80s. It's really interesting.
It is interesting. It's funny, and I should have guessed you would know something about this because we started watching this show, and I'm like, how have I never heard about this crazy-ass story before? And a lot of our listeners are already watching it and have asked us to check it out. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. So start watching Wild Wild Country, guys, because it gets weird fast.
All right.
And we have some very, very big news to announce. Kevin, should I drop in that sound effect here?
Do it.
We are in the March Madness podcast bracket finals. We are in the championship thanks to our listeners who helped us get through the penultimate round, beating Wine and Crime. We are now up against the great granddaddy of all radio shows and podcasts, This American Life. It is the four of us against Ira Glass. It's the four of us against Sarah Koenig. It's the four of us against Ben Calhoun. It's the four of us against David Sedaris. It's
You
the
met
four
Ben
of us.
Calhoun this week.
I did, against Sarah Vowell. It is the four of us against the great granddaddy of all podcasts / radio shows. Reactions. Kevin, what do you think of this development?
I think that they don't know anything about us or about this contest.
True.
But I think that our listeners will rally, boop, 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 and they'll go and vote, boop, 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 because that's what they've done. But it's so funny because the four of us know this isn't about us.
Oh, we know.
It's really about who can get their army out there.
Right.
And, man, our listeners are like...
They're like the White Walkers of podcast listeners.
They are loyal AF. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really their win. So
right.
I'm like, I'll be happy for us, but I'm going to be like really happy for the audience.
I did meet This American Life's Ben Calhoun this week, as you mentioned. I told him about this.
Are we also going up against Tony Malatina?
Oh, yeah, Tori Malatina. Yes,
okay.
yes.
Right.
He didn't know anything about it. And
Ben Calhoun knows
told me
about
that the show didn't know anything about it, nor did they plan to do anything about it. So
Perfect.
I think as long as This American Life...
Defensive indifference. It's like they pulled the goalie from the net.
We can continue to ask our listeners to go to discoverpods.com and vote for us in the Podcast Madness bracket. We could win if we beat This American Life, this whole damn thing. Toby, thoughts?
Sarah Vowell and I have been at each other's throats for decades.
This will settle it once and for all.
So yeah, this will be the final judgment on that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, Dana.
No, what's going to make my Monday mornings exciting when this is over?
I don't know. I think our listeners are probably excited to hear us not talk about it on the podcast anymore. But
that's probably true as well.
It's been a fun ride, Laura. What do you think of us making the finals of the Podcast Madness Bracket Challenge?
I think that this means if we take it all, the next time you just happen to bump into Sarah Koenig, she's no longer going to be like, oh, are you the one with the typewriter? Because we will have come up in the world by then.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to do a huge shout out to our listeners. Yes, those of you who have voted.
We're the one above you, so that's why you got to crane your neck to look at us.
Those of you who have voted in the tournament, whether or not you vote for us in the final round, we really hope you do. Kevin can put the link right in our
sure thing.
Show notes, and also just go to discoverpods.com to find the finals. But I do want to give a thank you to our listeners.
Vote before 7 o'clock on Sunday.
Yes. And as a very special thank you to our listeners, I purchased, this might be news to you, Kevin, 100 Crime Writers On oval bumper stickers.
Really?
Yes, that I am willing to personally mail to any listeners who have voted during this challenge. Just send an email to crimewriterson@gmail.com.
Oh, wow.
In the subject line, say, I voted for you. And then in the email, put your address, and we will pick 100 at random that come in the next week or so, if whether we win or not, to thank you and
How about
send
the
you a
first
sticker.
100? Those were the most loyal.
Yeah, that's probably fair. First 100. Okay, that's fair. We're changing the rules.
That's right.
Of
the contest.
So if you want a Crime Writers On sticker, and if you voted for us, if you want to send us a screenshot of you having voted, but if you already voted, I don't want to exclude you. So just let us know you voted for us. And as a big thank you to sort of celebrate having made it this far, we didn't think we were going to make it out of the first round. So it's pretty exciting. Now, Kevin, speaking of our listeners, can you do me a favor and introduce us to our latest group of listeners who are supporting the show on Patreon?
Yeah, we've got a great group here. We have helping us out by keeping the podcast going with a small monthly donation are Carol Soella, Julia Reynolds, Bonnie Dew, Lee Bardugo, Browen Carr Bates, Lisa Gallagher, Eric Kreisman, Esma, Jediah Cummings, the Getting Off podcast.
Nice.
Megan Maxey. Those are lawyers.
Okay.
It's not what you were thinking. Ooh, Laura. Michelle Bowman, C. Page 88, Karen McClendon, Chelsea Harlfinger, Big Tim's Funny Books. Mm-hmm. They're in Australia. If you like comics, check them out. Jim Du Bois, David Levine, Kate Carson, Alyssa Deuceman, Allison Horrocks, and Rebecca Neighbors Ledbetter.
I am 100% sure that you mispronounced at least 75% of those names.
That's right. I guarantee I will not say your name correctly.
And a special shout out to Jediah Cummings, one of our new Patreon fans. He's also the super fan that tweeted out all of the references we made to the Podcast Madness Challenge with all the episode numbers on Twitter. He's been cataloging our references to the contests and our disbelief at having made it through each round. And it's really, really lovely. He's a great listener. So it is, by the way, a very good time to join us on Patreon because, and this might come as news to you, Kevin, and you, Laura.
It's all right. We don't do anything on the show.
But we're about to make a big change to our Patreon.
Oh, what's that?
We're about to hand over the reins of our Patreon to Mr. Toby Ball.
Oh, congratulations, Toby.
Toby, do you want to fill our listeners in on what they can expect if they start supporting Partners in Crime Media on Patreon? What is coming down the pike, Toby Ball?
We thought we'd offer you some content.
Wow, what a good idea.
Which seems like a nice part of the deal. So what we're doing right now, and this stuff is still kind of in the formative stages, we'll be doing a monthly crime book club. I think both true crime and crime fiction with all sorts of special guests. And I think also doing a shorter, maybe weekly podcast about fiction writing. We'll probably also schedule some, AMAs, Ask Me Anythings, or Facebook Lives, stuff like that. So more details to come, but I'm excited to kind of take this on and have some more stuff for our listeners.
And if you want to interact with Toby, that's a good reason to join.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so that you can maybe, I don't know, have a little Toby touch in your life. So
Toby time.
Just go to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. Check it out. Toby is now running that for us. And good luck, Toby. And we wish you well in that endeavor.
Thank you.
All right. So, Kevin, can you please read this for me?
True Crime Podcast Update.
Now, quick note. Many listeners have emailed or tweeted or Facebooked me a link to an article that came out this week on Slate by Laura Miller. It was a piece about Atlanta Monster, and the title of said piece was Clueless. The piece was a very critical look at the podcast Atlanta Monster, pretty much encapsulated many of the things that I have long felt about that show. My favorite sentence that describes how she describes the show is, a much anticipated reexamination of a crime wave that riveted the nation is a meandering mess, a wasted opportunity to illuminate what has been shadowed for decades. Now, Kevin, you read this Laura Miller piece, right?
Yeah, I did.
What'd you think?
I have nothing more to say about that podcast, other than that was a very well-written article that seemed to sum up a lot of my concerns about the podcast and everything around it.
Me too. And I just want to say to all the listeners and to me, thank you. I have at times felt a little bit alone in my continuing criticism of this show.
I don't think you are ever alone.
But, it has bothered me to see NPR featuring it, the outlets I respect doing top 10 podcast lists that have it on it. And I'm like, I really don't think any people have listened. I don't think they have listened. And Laura Miller encapsulates in a very articulate and journalistic way the problems. I think it's a really great piece, and we can link to it in our show notes if anyone else is interested in reading it. Laura, did you read this story?
I kept seeing it teased. I only saw the new updated photo of the leader of that podcast, which looks a lot different than the last time I saw him online when I was watching all the YouTube frat boy videos.
Yeah.
So he cleans up well.
Yeah, he does. He does. All right, Kevin, could you please read this for me?
Fake Crime Podcast Update.
There's a little podcast called Black Tapes, which is one of the first really smash hit fiction podcasts to come out. Kevin, you're a big Black Tapes fan, right?
Yes, I am, actually.
Made by our friends, Terry Miles and Paul Bay. And that show had what was ostensibly its series finale earlier this year. And I, full disclosure, never listened to the series finale because I saw a lot of people online complaining a lot about the series finale, saying it felt like a shortcut, saying it sort of ended with this too neat a bow with Alex and Dr. Strand running off together and just dropping the whole plot and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like Hannibal.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. This week, new little teaser trailer comes out. Looks like Paul Bay is bringing Black Tapes back.
Hey guys.
All clear?
We're good.
Good.
Okay.
We don't have long. We should hurry.
We've got a lot to do.
Bringing back a series that listeners were dissatisfied with the ending of. Now, I think, Laura, this is something that's unique that maybe you can only do in podcasting, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I gave up on Black Tapes, I think, in the first season, so I didn't hear the fake out finale. But, this kind of reminds me of, you had suggested last week that I watch The Killing, and I had not watched The Killing ever, so I started watching it, and I was really into it. And then we were getting ready to tape, and I was getting busy, so I just looked up Wikipedia, and I found out that people were also very dissatisfied with the ending in that, so they ended up making a second season, it sounds like, basically to rectify what happened in the first season. But with the podcast, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to regain their momentum coming back after everybody thought it was over.
Well, what happened in The Killing was the first season ended and people were pissed. Kevin and I among them, because the first season had, it was really building up to the solving of this case that, was featured in the first season. And then it just ended. And it was like, what? It was very upsetting. And the reason I suggested you watch it was because I knew there was a second season in which they actually do solve the case.
Okay.
So I felt comfortable recommending it to you. But yeah, that sucked. Kevin, do you remember how much that sucked?
It did. And then and then they really had to kind of twist everything that kind of happened to get to the person who was the real killer.
Yeah.
And
so, Toby, do you think this is something that's a unique opportunity that in podcasting that doesn't exist in other medium, TV, movies, books, where you can basically get a do-over with your audience because people are subscribed to your feed and you can just drop something new?
Yes. I mean, obviously, producing the episodes requires a lot of work and stuff, but there's not all this other infrastructure that needs to happen if you're, doing a television show or you're trying to get a book published or whatever. You've kind of got the creative control. So if you want to do it, you can just go ahead and do it. And there's not a lot of people telling you can't or contracts to sign, so on and so on.
Right. It's not like they can just make a new episode of the end of The Sopranos to redo it when people were dissatisfied with it. Mm-hmm. And it's not like even the end of your book, you can just put out another chapter for people to buy. Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool. And I think I'm really happy that Paul Bay took this up because I don't know this for sure, but I suspect he was dissatisfied with the way people reacted to the conclusion and wanted to make something people were happy about. So good for him. Kevin, can you please read this for me?
True Crime TV update.
Guys, big breaking news. Are you ready?
Yes.
I just heard this before we started recording from our true crime
I know
friend.
What you're going to say.
Yep, Sarah Weinman. Tribeca, the festival, they are showing lots of new media products for TV, including the Westworld Season 2 premiere, a first look at an upcoming Pablo Picasso season of the show Genius. But most important, at the Tribeca Festival is premiering surprise new episodes of the great granddaddy of all true crime documentaries, The Staircase.
The Staircase.
Oh, boy.
We're going to have some new episodes of The Staircase looking at the final trial of Michael Peterson. And I have to know, Kevin, do you think they will feature the owl theory in these new episodes of The Staircase?
I don't know, because I don't think that Peterson's team put a lot of weight in it. You're shaking your head like they have?
Yeah, Rudolph, his attorney, remember there were some documents that he submitted a motion around about testing around the owl stuff, remember?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they probably could. At the time when Criminal did their first episode and they featured the owl theory, the Peterson people did not want to have anything to do with that because I guess they were fighting a different legal battle.
Right.
So I don't know. I think we would all like to see that. Although I don't know, Toby, how do you feel about the possibility that Mrs. Peterson was killed by an owl?
I think we've covered this before.
Is it the same owl that killed that woman in Germany? Followed them over.
You came after my neighbor. Now
Toby is a Peterson guilter. You know that, right?
Yeah.
But
I love it.
Was it Maine just last month that they had to put up signs all over the place because they had owls attacking people?
Yep.
Where was that?
Yeah. And I do not want anyone to tweet at me crime scene photos of Kathleen Peterson, please. I've got enough of those after tweeting about the owl a couple weeks ago.
Oh, man.
So gross and so inappropriate to send on Twitter. But I just want to hear more about the owl theory. I can't help it. And I'm really hoping these episodes cover it. But more important, I hope these episodes are as high quality as the rest of The Staircase. And for any of our listeners who joined us, we've talked about The Staircase many, many times. It sets a standard for true crime documentary, how it should be done. It is the greatest true crime documentary of all time. And look for it on demand, wherever you can find it. What was it, on Sundance or something, Kevin? It's been on Amazon.
Sundance,
it's been on
believe,
Netflix. It sort of flicks around. It's one of those. So looking forward to that. Real quick, I also wanted to get into something that a Twitter user sent us. This is a little prompt we were asked to respond to.
Okay.
This was from Miss Leah. She tweets at Leah's Lounge, and she had this question for us. Seems the most important stories stay with, change, or comfort us, or shake us to the core, Leah says. I'm curious, as writers, what book had such an impact upon you? And she says, East of Eden by Steinbeck never leaves me, but I can't explain why. So, Toby, I know that you saw this tweet. Have you been thinking about that? And how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I have been thinking about it. I haven't come up with a really good answer. And I know I've mentioned this book before, but Financial Lives of the Poets by Jess Walter, I thought just did a really good job of kind of summing up what life was like for a certain demographic during the recession. So that's when I recommend to people all the time, because it kind of felt accurate to me. His sort of observations about things and the way the sort of economic climate affected families that were roughly like my age.
Yeah. So you don't have like a book that you read like as a kid that has always stuck with you, that sort of like latched into you, that you always think about when you just think about like what makes a great book?
Well, there's Ralph Steadman's Jelly Book. Do you know who Ralph Steadman is?
No, I don't.
You know who, when you take a look at Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that weird art that's in that?
Yeah.
So that's Ralph Steadman. And he did this book, a kid's book, about how basically Jell-O is made. And it's like this really long thing about like there's some emperor. I'm trying to remember the whole thing. And part of it involves like playing tennis. And then there are these cows. And it's like this big thing. And it's got these weird pictures. And I just remember that was like the one book that like both my sister and I, like when my parents were sort of distributing some of the kids' books, my sister was there, and my sister and I like are totally like fair about everything in those regards. But I got this phone lamp that I really liked, and she was the person who was there when they were looking at the kids' books, so she took the Jelly book. So
you
that's
are
my
weird,
story.
Toby. You are
Yeah,
weird.
this is like a window into the world.
Right.
I mean,
Used to
So
be
you
first
should go and take a
Jello,
look.
now this.
So go and take a look. Google Ralph Steadman's Jelly Book. I think you'll be charmed.
Now we know what to get Toby for Christmas. 18 copies
There
of
you
Ralph
go.
Steadman's The Jelly Book. What about you, Laura? How would you answer this question? Any stories, books stay with you?
I'm going to be a little more normal, I guess. Or predictable, I guess. I think for me, it's always been animal stories. When I was a kid, Misty of Chincoteague was a book that I read and reread over and over again, along with all the books. And these were true stories set on Chincoteague Island. I actually went there probably 18 years ago, and I hunted down the dead stuffed Misty, which was in somebody's house, which was totally random. In recent years, a really great animal story that I read that was one that it was so good, but it was one that you finished and you were just also so sad because of the story itself, was the story of Edgar Sawtelle by David Robleski. And it's a story about a boy who is born mute. He only speaks in sign language. He lives in Wisconsin in this very remote area, and his family raises a fictional breed of dog. And it ends up being kind of a journey that this boy goes on, a very tragic family situation. And it's also like 800 or 900 pages long. So it's one of those books that you can't help but become completely immersed in. And that was one that just stuck with me because the story itself was just so poignant, but also so sad when it ended.
I loved Misty of Chincoteague when I was a kid, by the way. You're not alone.
Did you?
Yes, I loved it.
So are you impressed that I found the dead stuffed Misty?
Totally. I have to go with something that's very different from the things we talk about now. I mean, I don't think I've talked about my love for John Irving at all on this podcast.
Yeah, you should. Remember you got to meet him?
Yes,
I took your photo.
Yes, my favorite writer, and it's surprising to me even to this day that John Irving is my favorite writer. Even when I remember it always being surprised that I would characterize him that way, because all his books are basically the same. Like, you're reading a John Irving book immediately. They have the same elements, the same voice. Not dissimilar to like Stephen King insofar that the protagonist is the same archetype over and over and over again. Sort of lone, single, asexual guy looking back at some aspect of his childhood. But my favorite book of all time is Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving.
Yes.
I have read that book at least 30 times. It was my litmus test book for a great part of my life. Whenever I would start dating somebody, I would make them read it. And if they didn't like it, I would know there was going to be a problem. And it would take a nice, like, long chunk usually for people to read it. So, like, it gave me a few months to figure out other things about them in the meantime, because it's a long book. But what I love about Prayer for Owen Meany in particular, it takes place in New Hampshire, and I didn't live in New Hampshire the first time I read it, but there's something about this place that's captured beautifully in the book. Also, I think that John Irving is a master of teenage interiority, even though very often the perspective of the book is looking back, and so it's told in the past tense. He really captures that feeling of what it feels like to be inside a teenager's body and the way that you perceive things, and things are so important. And it's just like sharply cutting and funny, like these little quick passages that go by. My favorite line in Prayer for Owen Meany is there's a really famous scene where they're doing a Christmas nativity, and John, the main character, describes everyone's wearing dingy brown robes, which is the 3-piece suit of biblical times. Anyway, I love that book. It's the only book I ever completely come out with quickly when I say what's your favorite book of all time. Really, really beautifully constructed, strange, and wonderful novel. What about you, Kevin?
Well, it's funny that Leah mentions East of Eden, because the book that always stays with me is also a John Steinbeck book. And all of Steinbeck's books, I find like the last paragraph or the last sentence of the book is such a revelation about human nature, or a
gut punch,
something about the plot. And it happens almost every book. In Dubious Battle, Winter of Our Discontent, The Pearl, Red Pony, Of Mice and Men. East of Eden was probably like number 2 on the list, but number 1, The Grapes of Wrath. And it's because
this explains something.
What?
Why every single time we play charades, The Grapes of Wrath is one of your clues. Like every single, you are so good at acting out The Grapes of Wrath in charades. You're so good at it.
Are we at the off-topic update again?
No, but really, that does explain it.
No, but that's the one that always stays with me. And if you think back to high school when you read it, essentially the scene is that there's one of the Jodes, all the Jodes, in their giant truck, just all like go out to California, the Okies, and Grandma's dead in the back or whatever. And there's the woman who loses her child, is stillborn or something like that, and the man who doesn't have a job and is starving.
Yeah.
And she breastfeeds him.
Oh, the man.
Man.
Not the dead child.
Not the dead child.
Right,
No.
Right.
And it just, like, you read that and then read it when you or someone is unemployed trying to find work.
Right.
It's just a gut punch. So I think that's a book that, like, really stays with me all these years later, almost 80 years after it was published.
Yeah.
I think it's still very timely, and a book like that is something that you should just be able to pick up and slide right into, like, really comfortably, just like True Religion jeans.
Wow.
That is quite the transition from Grapes of Wrath to True Religion jeans. I'm very impressed, Kevin.
Yeah, True Religion are like these really great high-end jeans that fit really, really well.
You love your True Religion jeans.
I do. So you order them online through their website, truereligion.com. And in order to do the fitting, like, they give you, a couple of the usual things, like, your height and your weight, but they also ask you, like, well, what other brands are you wearing? So if you wear this and from that department store, they kind of have an algorithm figuring out, like, from the different things that you wear, what the right size is.
Right.
And bingo, nailed it.
It
Absolutely
worked?
Nailed it. Yes. Yeah. And I ended up getting jeans that have a slimmer leg.
Mm-hmm.
And, usually, like, a guy shaped like an apple like me doesn't want to wear tight jeans.
I kind of think of you as a bowling pin.
Oh, bowling pin?
An upside down bowling pin.
I look like a chicken. I like big in the middle, little legs. But Rebecca, like, these ended up, like, not being tight at all.
They fit you beautifully.
No, they just look really good. It's just a fantastic fit. And, that's
look Queer Eye action for you in those True Religion jeans. It's like what Tan would pick out for you.
Yeah, because precision is in fit is what makes them the most comfortable and flattering jeans on the market. They've got everything from like skinny to high-rise to boot cut, straight, and retro-inspired wide-leg jeans. And there's a whole bunch of other great stuff on their website for men, for women, all sorts of clothes that are very fashion-forward and stuff that's like really elevated.
Yeah.
You know?
So, kind of like elevated street chic.
Yes. Yeah, you'll be super comfortable, and you will look great. True Religion jeans are even made with the softer fabric that keeps its shape and it won't fade. And I tell you, after washing them twice, still great. Are you ready for the perfect fitting, most comfortable, most flattering pair of jeans? Right now, True Religion is giving our listeners 20% off their entire purchase.
It's a good deal.
They go to truereligion.com/crime and enter code CRIME at checkout. So do what I did. Go to truereligion.com/crime and enter code CRIME at checkout for 20% off your entire order.
URL and code CRIME.
Crime.
What else you got, Kevin?
Well, things that also like to stay with us are stories about strong women.
True.
Right?
Yes.
And so if you missed the premiere of The Good Fight on CBS All Access, you can still get caught up because The Good Fight continues. It's got everything that you like about a great drama, exciting plot, relatable characters. Christine Baranski, what else could you want?
Baranski.
You know who else is on the show? Is Rose Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what she...
From Game of Thrones?
Yeah, you know nothing, Jon Snow. But she's great in this role, too. I mean, you just want to see her...
She's married to Kit Harington in real life. Just FYI. Side note.
CBS loves that you brought that up. But the only place you can see The Good Fight, which brings over some of those characters from The Good Wife, is you can only see it on CBS All Access. You can get right now a free trial of CBS All Access by going to cbs.com/crime. And there you can catch up on all of Season 1, get up to date on Season 2, about 10,000 other shows and episodes at CBS All Access that you can watch. And when you're doing that, make sure you do check out The Good Fight. Drama, excitement, the show that everyone is talking about. And it's got a great theme song, too. Just gonna say. Hurry to cbs.com/crime for your free trial of CBS All Access and tune into Season 2 of the critically acclaimed show, The Good Fight. That's cbs.com/crime for your free trial of CBS All Access.
cbs.com/crime.
Crime.
All right.
CBS.com/crime.
Crime.
That's crazy. That's crazy that CBS on their website just went /crime.
That's true.
And it's us.
It's us.
It's not Dragnet.
No, it's us.
It's not Marcus Welby.
No, it's us.
It's us.
It's us.
Suck it, CSI.
It's not 2.5 Men.
No,
it's us.
Right.
Wait, Marcus Welby?
Wasn't that a TV show?
It's Welby MD,
yeah,
isn't
maybe.
it?
I'm going way back, people. Adam 12, I think.
Yes.
I don't know.
You should probably check and see if those were even CBS programs.
Don't send this to them, all right?
Hey, The Young and the Restless is on CBS.
That's right.
Just saying. They don't have the code CRIME. We do.
That's right. We have Young and the Restless, and it's long AF.
All right. Moving on. We are going to be talking about Season 2 of the hit podcast from the CBC, Missing and Murdered, Finding Cleo.
To have your family member stolen, murdered, then missing?
Oh, wait a minute. This is Cleo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The government can get away with things if nobody knows that, what happens.
Yeah, I'm not sure that information is correct.
She was driven away and I went the other way. And I've been looking for her ever since. Promised I'd find her, and eventually I will.
She tried her darndest to get back to Canada and see her family. She did everything within her power to get back there.
In my heart, I think that killed her. Are you recording me?
Yes, is that okay?
No, it's not.
Missing and Murdered, Finding Cleo looks at the case of a girl both allegedly murdered and now missing. In the show, we follow reporter Connie Walker as she hopes to find out what happened to a young Cree Indian girl who died and whose remains are unaccounted for 40 years after she and her siblings were forced into adoption. The investigation highlights the aftermath of a misguided Canadian program called the 60s Scoop that took 20,000 Native children from their families and placed them in predominantly white white homes all over North America. Now, we are going to be discussing some spoilers in our conversation. So if you'd rather hear our review of whether or not you should check out this podcast, look at the timestamp that we put in the show notes to find out where you should skip to get our thumbs up or thumbs down review. I just want to start with the obvious thing, the thing that I told you, Kevin, when I started listening to this podcast and said, yeah, you got to check it out. Mm-hmm. Someone knows something in this podcast.
Yeah, we're not left to, well, we don't know exactly how things are going to turn out, but we do get an answer to what happened to Cleo.
Yes, and that is surprising and I think really satisfying and something that's a little bit different than some of the other shows we've listened to. Mm-hmm. But I do want to talk a little bit about structure because the first 3 episodes of this show are build up and backstory, explaining what it is that Connie's trying to do, what the issue is that led to Cleo's disappearance, and kind of getting a lot of that context and backstory in place. Laura, what did you think of the setup? The first 3 episodes in particular of Missing and Murder Finding Cleo, where, we kind of get the backstory. We then visit, Christine, the one sister. We go see April, the second sister. We go see Johnny, the brother in Pennsylvania. And really get a full picture of the pain of these people and why this case is so important to them.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to the backstory and I'm listening to the thin explanation that they all had about what happened to Cleo. Mm-hmm. And it was really strange to me. It was like they all heard the same story, but nobody knew exactly when or where. It was like Arkansas. She was killed. She was raped. To me, it was very mysterious how they all actually heard the same very random, very thin story about what happened. But as I'm listening to everything that they've gone through, and it's basically very transparent the way that Connie is reporting it as she's putting this together. So you're kind of going along with her. You feel like you're kind of in on the action as she is learning everything about what we know to date at that point about Cleo. I was left at that point thinking there was no way in hell they're going to find this girl or what happened to her, because it may have happened here, it may have happened there, we're not sure, we don't know. It just seemed like they had so little information to go on and so many roadblocks that they had hit, but also just tragic what had really separated all these siblings to get to where they were when the story begins with Connie.
Right. Now Toby, you actually have the take that what makes this podcast different is that they start with a mystery that seems solvable.
Well, this may just be showing my ignorance, but you're trying to find somebody who's not hiding. It's mostly a matter of finding the right records and following a path that happened 40 years ago. While people aren't being necessarily all that helpful, at the same time, there's nobody who's trying to prevent them from finding stuff. So I kind of felt as though she had set up wisely, this isn't in any way a slam on it, a situation where there could have been a reasonable expectation that they would have been successful in finding what happened to Cleo. And they do. And some of it, there's some sort of luck and coincidence that occurs. But my sense is that they probably would have found this stuff out anyway.
Well, there was one huge lucky break, which was that the producer on the show was, looking at databases and looking at the website, findagrave.com, which I've actually used in my own work. Findagrave.com is actually a super useful tool to find dead people because it really literally is a database of people's pictures of graves that people have randomly uploaded as one of these crowdsourcing tools. They find the grave. Turns out the grave really is her, but then they have this unbelievable break on the reporting trip. And Kevin, this almost exactly the same thing happened to you on a reporting trip. So can you just talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, this is the parallel. When I went to Alabama to do some research on Sheila LaBarre, female serial killer in New Hampshire, I went to her hometown and went to the county courthouse to look up if she had any criminal records or divorce records, anything like that.
And just like Connie, you were on a very limited time frame.
Right. You're only in town for a little while.
We hear Connie saying a couple of times, like, we can only hear for like 2 or 3 days. And like, we've had a couple listeners ask questions about that, but that's legit. That's how these trips work, right?
Yeah. Well, your boss is sending you. You're not going to be able to just walk around and do whatever you want. Like Brian from S-Town. I don't know, maybe I'll interview the killer standing over there. I don't know. Yeah, so I had like 2 days or whatever. So I went to the courthouse and I asked, can I see any records on a Sheila Bailey? And I saw like one woman looked like her head snapped up, and then she got up from her desk and sneaked out a side door. Like there was going to be a shootout at the OK Corral, and she was escaping through the Batwing doors. And they said go wait in the hallway. And I'm thinking I'm getting the runaround because I'm a Northerner or some other crap like that. And then this woman comes out and she says, "I'm Sheila's sister." And I was like, whoa, what? Yeah. And she ended up being a great source.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still Facebook friends, so there's that. But it is kind of I don't want to say needle in a haystack, but yeah, that is sort of, that's always sort of a surprising turn.
Yeah. Laura, what did you think when you heard this scene? So this is the funeral home in that town in New Jersey where they find the grave. They're sent there to talk to the owner, Jill, and they end up running into another Jill, who just seems like she's just trying to maybe be helpful and just get them some papers. And then
Jill said she was 13 years old in 1978, the same age as Cleo Madonia. It's a long shot, but I show her the picture we have of Cleo, the one we've been carrying around with us for months. So are you from here as well? I was just wondering if you would recognize her photo.
No, I don't think so. I am from here, but no, I don't recognize her picture.
But then she looks at the photo again.
Oh, wait a minute. This is Cleo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, wow. Yeah, she and I were friends.
What?
Yes.
And
how many of your 8th grade friends are working in funeral homes?
Exactly. Laura, what did you think of this break in the story?
I was like, this is gold. I loved this whole scene in general because I felt like the suspense kept building. Like they're at the cemetery and you're following, they're walking around looking. And then this old lady comes out. "What are you doing?" And then she's like, "You got to go see Earl at the other cemetery." And I mean, it just, I was really invested at this point. So when they go to this funeral home and then the girl comes back up and she's got the records and she suddenly realizes, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, my poor husband, I'm recounting this whole thing for him because I was like, you're not even going to believe this. I thought there was not a chance in hell they're going to find her. And this random woman at a funeral home was her childhood friend. And,
and still has pictures of her at her house.
It was
who keeps
amazing.
Pictures from 8th grade?
How can you play? I mean, you could never have planned something or expected something like that to happen. But it just made this story just so incredible. And things like this just kept happening in this series, and I'm like, this woman, Connie, is the luckiest person I know or something, because these just crazy coincidences keep happening as she's reporting. Either that or she is just really good at investigating. But,
yeah. Well, she's also really nice and she listens to people. And I said this to Kevin earlier, and I'm not 100% sure you agreed with me, Kevin. I think she could teach a masterclass to asshole podcasters in how to actually approach people and talk to them. Because she actually keeps all of her approaches in the show. We hear the first knock on the door, and when she first talks, we hear her walk up to Cleo's dad in the casino.
Hi, I'm Connie.
Oh, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good? Are you winning? There are people playing at the machines on either side of Sydney, and it's really cramped. Not an ideal place for this conversation. Can we buy you a coffee or something?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, well, we'll just be over here. Let us know when you're...
I keep wondering, though, what is the microphone situation? How come she's walking into these buildings and knocking on doors holding a microphone?
It sounds like the microphone is down low during the introductions. They're off mic during the intro. It sounds like it's down here.
You went to a casino? Okay, yeah. I don't know how that part works. That's kind of how my mind is.
Well, remember, they did that in the funeral home because the woman asked them to turn the microphone off. And then she made the decision to turn it back on.
I'll just say...
I thought she was taping on her phone or something, because it seemed like she's always taping.
I think it's down low.
Look, I'll just say this, folks. Think about where you're working. If somebody walked in and they're holding a microphone, no matter what, they may be smiling or whatever, that's going to be all of a sudden the thing that you notice.
Yeah.
And you may make a decision. You're not going to say, oh, yeah. You'll make a decision about whether or not you want that
It's
to
a
continue.
question I would ask Connie,
Which
just
just
how
doesn't
she's
come up.
holding
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
think her producer's holding it. I think they're holding it just down here. They're not doing this, in the face.
Right.
It's a good practice when you arrive somewhere. You start rolling tape before you get out of the car. That's the way you do it to get a story, right? That's how you sometimes get great sound of the dog barking in the yard and the scene sound.
Right.
And if you're David
not supposed to
Ridgen,
hide
the
the
wind chimes
microphone.
that sound like
I'm
angels.
not saying she hid the microphone.
I don't
I'm
think
saying
she hid
you're
it.
not supposed to do that.
I think
I'm
it's
just
down
surprised I
low.
don't hear anybody reacting to the fact that they're somebody just walked in and is recording them.
Right.
That nobody seems to be concerned about that.
Right, but what do you think
seems like
of
they're
her?
oblivious
I
to
think
it.
it's how she presents herself. I think that the way that she presents herself is very non-confrontational, very approachable, very like gentle when she goes in and starts talking to people. So I think that she kind of disarms them in that way because she's not aggressive in the way that she's going in to talk to people. She kind of eases in, and it seems like the people get comfortable very fast. And they don't feel threatened by her. So maybe that's why they're not, noticing the microphone right up front. Or if they are, just her demeanor is making it such that they're not getting anxious about that.
She has a very open demeanor as a journalist when she approaches people. And I think that she has the secret weapon of being Cree. So when she talks to people who are also Indigenous, First Nation, Canadian people, the first conversation they have is, where are you from? Where are you? And so she's able to sort of use that as an inroad. When she talks to people who are white here in the States, she approaches them like, this is not my first choice to be doing this. Hello, here's what I'm doing. Here's who I am, in a way that's transparent and warm. And she doesn't push.
And she's being herself.
She's being herself.
Which works in her favor.
And she's not being like the kind of journalist that I think I've heard her do things in the show. And Laura, you might feel the same way. Like when she went to visit April and April said, April promises to send us a copy of that file. I'm like, no, Connie, take the file, go to Kinko's, make a copy of it yourself and bring it back to April. Like, but Connie's approach is just like, can you send me a copy of that? And the person's like, sure. And she's happy to walk away and just let them be. And I'm just like, wow, this is her secret weapon. This is her approach. It's also, I think, Toby, I think it's her narrative approach as well. And I think that we probably, I'm just guessing, would all agree there are times in this show where it unfolds very slowly and it's sort of like revealing layers slowly. And there's a lot of just like slow down moments. But Toby, what do you think of that style of storytelling? That some things are just let to kind of unfold at their own pace in that same kind of relaxed, slowed down way that I think Connie also kind of just is.
Right. And I think she's smart in that stuff doesn't happen until you're pretty into the story.
You mean the slow parts happen later in the podcast? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I was listening to, I don't know, like 5 and 6 or something today, and I was driving, and there's like a part of it where they're basically driving in the car and she's making a bunch of phone calls, and sometimes she's getting people and sometimes she's not, but it works. Because you're also kind of interested in what's going to happen when she reaches these people. So I think there's a way in which you kind of get put into her shoes. You have the same sort of feeling of expectation about what she's going to find out. And then when they go to Little Pine in Saskatchewan, things go pretty slowly there too, but you get a sense that that's a reflection of just how interactions there are. It's sort of unhurried.
Thinking about those scenes, and especially when she first gets to Saskatchewan and she's talking to the men and they're talking about like the pipe ritual and the whole teepee thing, I kind of feel when listening to those, like that's the story she really wants to tell. She really wants to show us this kind of lost culture and these the stories of these people who are there and who have all these memories. Like, to me, that's where Connie's like storytelling heart is. And she's wrapped it in this framing device of this mystery, which is important, and it's a driver for the story.
But it's an opportunity to tell the story of the 60s.
It's an opportunity to tell the 60s, and it's an opportunity to have us meet the people.
Yeah, where she's able to talk about the schools in the first season of Missing and Murdered. How
Alberta Williams,
Yeah, how that kind of get brought in. I think it's the same thing. It's an opportunity, but it's not a cheap one because it's actually very relevant to this story,
right? And
what ended up happening to Cleo and how she was taken from Saskatchewan and wound up in New Jersey. Which is it's almost like a punchline in there if you're from New Jersey or something like that. But that whole thing is all sort of relative to the system that brought her there, and like. We know, we're in the spoiler part of the podcast. Okay, we find out halfway through this series that she died by her own hand at age 13. So the idea that maybe we're going to get the answer to the question, who killed Cleo, we know that that's not exactly what we're going to get. But I think that we already know the answer. Who killed Cleo? The system.
Question, Kevin.
Yeah.
Why would there be an open police file on somebody who committed suicide?
Well, I think it probably doesn't have anything to do with her suicide.
It might be another crime.
Another crime that she's associated with. And look, they keep dangling this story about a hitchhiker who got raped.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I'm guessing that's going to tie in.
What do you think, Laura?
I think there's going to be more to the story if she can ever get her hands on that police file, because that seems like a lot for a suicide. I mean, it was a child, so that definitely makes it more unusual. I feel like there's going to be something else about that investigation that made it go on as long as it did, from the way that nobody would talk about it.
Right.
I feel like there's something else, like another piece of that puzzle that is going to be revealed at the right time.
Yeah. Can we just talk about Johnny, please?
You mean Samson?
Yeah, I really want to talk about Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
We meet more than three, but we primarily talk to three of Cleo's siblings in this podcast. There's Christine, who brought the story to Connie. There's April, who lives in a mysterious New England city that Kevin and I were like doing our best to guess at which city it was.
Same
mysterious New England town. I am leaning toward northern Vermont myself, but
they have
I don't
apartments
know.
with buzzers.
They have apartments with buzzers. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, and then there's Johnny, who was adopted to Pennsylvania after being basically bribed by the Canadian government with hockey camp and a bicycle, which fucking bananas story,
yeah.
But who sees himself now as an adult as being relatively at peace with the pain of his past. He knew his mother the best of all of the kids. He had to take care of the kids himself when he was a little kid. And he's turned into this incredibly tragic, incredibly stoic, incredibly lovable, but sad adult man. Almost seems like a fictional character, Johnny does. Toby, what do you think of this character? I kind of think he's like the heart of the podcast myself.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with him, obviously. One of the things that really struck me was when his cousin back in Saskatchewan was talking about how he just wished that, it's confusing, but Johnny is called Sammy back home because his middle name is Samson. But he was saying that he wanted Johnny to come home. And Johnny says that he doesn't want to go back. But the reality is that he's fairly assimilated.
Mm.
You know, he talks about how he's got a decent enough life and he's got his friends, and you feel as though, well, he's a tragic and clearly unhappy figure, that he is where he wants to be, and he feels sort of at home where he is at that point. So it's like this weird thing where the ultimate goal of this awful program, it ends up kind of being, I wouldn't say successful, but its goal is achieved with him, in that he doesn't have any interest in going back to, the reservation. He basically is living the life of an American in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Mm.
There's a whole lot going on with him.
Yeah, he seems really, to me, very broken. Kevin, we hear those scenes where he's talking about being abused on the farm, where he was adopted out.
And I can say this now because I told friends about it. It wasn't any kind of insertion or nothing. They played like, oh, you're the cow, we're the bull. It was a weird game. But it was like, at the time, you don't think nothing of it. But it was like, there's nothing inserted, but it was still strange. I thought about it. I'm like, I was sitting one day thinking about it. I'm like, I came to revelation. I think I was abused, but I wasn't really abused. Does that make sense?
No, Johnny, that was definitely abuse.
Yeah.
Like, as a listener, you want to talk back to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, all these memories that he's just saying, I'm fine with this, I'm fine with that. And it's so painful, right?
Yeah, and I thought one of there were just a couple of times where people let their emotions get the best of them. Like Christine, there were a couple of times when she was talking about her mother, and she started to cry when she was talking to the government official, and like you really could feel her pain. And then when Connie told the cousin in Little Pine the news about what happened to Cleo, you could tell he was sniffling, and he was fighting back some tears. And she said something like, "Are you okay, or do you want to take a moment?" And he just said, like, "I'll deal with it later."
Right.
Which is just like, I'm just basically saying, what I do is I stuff it down, and then I wait till I get home, and then I deal with it then,
right.
Or maybe I don't. It's
hard.
It's hard. And, that's one of the strengths of the podcast and the interviewing, is that, you get people to really open up, and you can see their pain. You can hear their pain.
What you were saying, Kevin, reminded me of when Connie tells Johnny that she's found Cleo.
Right.
And I'm like waiting for this big reaction. And he doesn't really react.
He was arguing with her about the date, remember? Like he just argued about the logistics.
Yeah, I think she even said to him, I was expecting more of a response. Thinking about it afterwards, I think, somebody that grew up like he did had to learn not to respond. So I think that his response to finding out about Cleo actually is very telling because it's really, a sign of what he went through in his life to that point.
I do think that some people who are used to a different kind of podcast, a different pace of podcast, may find a lot of the backstory and family stuff takes away from what they want, which is action in the story.
Right.
This story is different from anything we've listened to like it because, to me, I almost think of it like a novel. The action in the story doesn't matter without hearing about the impact. And I am not a fan of grief porn, as you know. I don't like over-focusing on victims in these cases, over-focusing on family pain. I know people get wrapped up in that sometimes, but it can take away from just sort of like, the what happened aspect of it. But the pain is what happened in the story. What's interesting to me is that I have relatives that were alive when I was little and who died and who I never met. I don't think about what could have been different if I had the opportunity to meet and know those people because I didn't have my entire culture ripped away from me involuntarily.
Right.
So the reason that these siblings care so much about a sibling they barely remember is because the opportunity wasn't even there. That's what they're grieving, is the opportunity. We get into a lot of history and a lot of the stuff around what the Canadian government did and how they're coping with it. But episode 8, the episode title, Salesman of the Year.
Oh,
thoughts? Yeah. I have a feeling some outrage.
I had some outrage, Rebecca. I went out today at lunchtime. I've had cabin fever. So I'm trying to go to lunch and do a walk. So I was like walking. We have a route up and down the river here in town. And I was listening to that episode and I started like swearing. Thankfully, there was no one around me. I was like, what the are you kidding me? Like salesperson of the month for getting children adopted. It enraged me. And I was surprised. Speaking of reactions, I felt like Connie and Marnie weren't as outraged about it as I thought they should be, as they were. I mean, they kind of were, but they weren't, or maybe they just were used to it at that point in the research. But it's just such a commentary on like the state of what was going on in like the Canadian like social work / adoption system at that time, that they were able to internally in that agency joke about, quote, selling children, the most children, especially these Native children, into homes. That's when the pace picked up for me again.
Right.
In this, I was kind of like, we kind of had a little bit of a lull. We're kind of following up. I mean, we did have the random encounter with the dad in the casino. And then the salesperson episode, yes.
Yeah, it pissed me off. And the commercial?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh my God.
Well, let's talk about like the pacing and the style and the potential flaws here. Because I mean, we've talked about what's happening in the podcast. I think we all agree is super interesting and contextually important. The structure. We have, a climax really in the midpoint of the episodes we've heard so far.
Right.
And then a lot more after that. Kevin, what do you think of the structure of this so far?
Well, I think it's very classical plotting structure, where you have the climax sort of in the middle, and then you have the falling action afterwards, and that sort of like what happens because of the climax, the fallout. And a lot of times with a mystery, it's weighted so that the climax happens at the end, the very end. We get sort of the surprise. I kind of thought, okay, we hit that episode and you find out that she kills herself, and there's probably not a crime associated with that. There's nothing left to tell of the story, but there is.
Right.
It's structured as such that this is Connie's journey from start all the way through, the things that she discovers. So that's good. I do have some other concerns about the narrative style, which I think you're holding your finger
just
up,
for
so you
one
want
second,
me to put a pin in it.
Can I just ask
fine.
a question about the climax, a moment just before the climax?
Yeah.
Before we knew about the suicide,
yeah.
When I heard about the suicide, I felt really bad about one thing.
What's that?
How I was yelling. You were in the car, and I were in the car together listening to the episode right before when she has the meeting with Jill.
Yeah.
And Jill just refuses to tell her what happened to Cleo. And I'm like, why do you have to be such a bitch, Jill? Just tell her. Yeah. What is the matter, Jill? Like that build-up part was just, it was true. It's what happened. But it was also like so frustrating in like a really great way. Sort of pre-climax way.
I totally suspected that's what the answer was
I
going to be.
didn't. Why did you say something to me when I was in the car?
Why didn't I say? Well, I didn't want to ruin it for you. But why else would would you say? Oh, well, she had pneumonia and died. Yeah, like what would be?
What did you think, Laura?
I thought that somebody in her foster family killed her.
I thought that maybe Jill just was unsure of what the details were, and she didn't want to get it wrong. So, Toby, you thought that the suicide was what was going to happen too?
Yeah, I mean that seems like the one most likely thing that somebody would not want to be the one to impart to somebody else.
Yeah, Toby,
it works really well narratively though, because you think when you find her, you're also going to find out exactly what happened to her, and you're going to get those two things like right at once.
Right.
But instead, that gets dragged out because you get one, but you don't get the other. So now you're like waiting for the other thing. So not that like people intentionally held back to build the suspense, but that was sort of a natural outcome of the fact that they believe they found her, but they don't know what happened to her.
Right, right.
It would have been shitty fiction, but it was
real. It was good real life. Yeah,
for nonfiction, the fact that it's real added that bit of suspense or waiting or whatever.
Now, Kevin, we share, I think, a justified criticism of this podcast. Do you want to be the one to talk about that?
Part of it is Connie's narrative, and I know get grief for like the Canadian storytelling way, and I don't think this has anything to do with it, but. Look, there's an over-reliance on the rhetorical question to move things along, and it ends up being a real crutch and a distraction.
Yeah.
Mrs. Madonia told me that Cleo had attempted to go back to Saskatchewan, but she didn't say how. Did she try to hitchhike? Was that news story we read about a teenager being assaulted at all related to Cleo? If not, what would lead such a young girl to take her own life? Was there any doubt that it was a suicide? If not, why did police do such a comprehensive investigation? What is in that thick police file? Why does her biological family believe Cleo was murdered?
Context is important, and you can give it, and you can do it in that way. But if you count up the number of question marks in her script, I mean, it's excessive. And I tell you, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It is persistent, and if I were a figure skating judge, I would be knocking lots of points off of this, off of what's a really good program.
Right.
So I just wish that it could dial back a little bit of the.
I can't help but wonder, and the questions. Yes.
Yeah, and the word heartbreaking gets used at least once an episode.
Well, more than once an episode.
Yeah, and I'm like, you don't have to tell me what's heartbreaking.
Right.
Either I know it. You don't have to point that out. That's one thing you don't have to point out.
Right. I do feel
it's all tell and no show.
When you hear her say that to an interviewee, when someone tells her a story and she says that's heartbreaking, that should stay.
Fine.
That should stay.
Yeah, that should stay.
When she says it's heartbreaking to think of ...
Yeah.
To me, that's like the whole point of this is that we shouldn't need that. This is well done enough that we don't need it. We don't need you to tell us. Because it is. It just is. And we don't need you to tell us. I can't help but think
But I can't help but think about Cleo Samagonis and the story that her family heard about her death.
Yeah, we're already there because you've done a really good job putting this together.
Yeah, it's too much A1 sauce on a really good steak.
Toby, do you hear the same thing that Kevin and I hear when we listen to this?
I did notice it. I did notice it, and it didn't necessarily bug me, but it is like it's a noticeable tick.
There are other podcasters we've smacked down for this kind of thing.
Yes,
so I think
but
to be consistent.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, it's not that the podcast is perfect in every single way,
right?
And this doesn't disqualify it as a good podcast.
Yeah, this is a legitimate criticism.
Yeah, because and the other thing is, it's like so much else of it is so well constructed. I actually really like the exposition that Connie does. That's just like telling us what she did. I think my favorite exposition in the show is when, they do some stuff that is like something you're hearing more sort of like Nat sound exposition, where she'll say, all right, we're getting out of the car and we're going to talk to so-and-so.
So Jen and I are off to talk to Nora. I'm really excited to actually talk to somebody who knew Lillian as an adult, because I don't feel like we've talked to anyone who's actually been able to tell us what Lillian was like. But Nora she's in her 80s, so we'll have to see just how much she remembers.
And she does that, and then she doesn't repeat it by saying, we got out of the car, and then we can talk to so-and-so.
Right.
Like she just leaves what she said there to set the scene in as the exposition. I like that, and I like it when she tells somebody that what they just said is heartbreaking. I don't like it when she tells me that it's heartbreaking. But I do think that those things stick out because she does such a good job of demonstrating how much something hurts. Like she can just let it sit and leave that quiet.
The thing that bugged me the most, and this is super nitpicky, and I'm going to regret saying it, but when they're reading the reports and there's like the typing in the background.
Yep. Unnecessary.
Ding.
Yep.
I was just like, you don't need to do that thing.
Yeah,
It
no,
just-
I
it
didn't
seems a
like that
little
either. I didn't like it either. I think that they did it for the first time to demonstrate they were doing the, that there was an actor, which I think is fine to do it as an audio cue once, and then to like have it just be like a quick audio cue here and there. But then it was just underneath the whole track of typewriting was underneath the person talking. That's whoever mixed it. I would just say I wouldn't have made that choice, but it is nitpicky. I agree. All right. Is it time for us to review this podcast, you think? Missing and Murdered, Finding Cleo. Okay. Should our listeners check this podcast out? Should they listen to the 8 episodes that have dropped so far and get into this story from Connie Walker and the CBC? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down? I'm going to start with you.
I say thumbs up. This is one of the more interesting podcasts we've listened to in some time. And unlike, not to throw shade at the other Canadian podcasts they keep advertising, but, the mystery is solved. It's not like some of these podcasts we listen to where they're trying to find something out and they don't find a satisfying bit of information. We find it out. And then not only that, but you're also, I was not aware of all this background that she gets into about the 60s scoop and the residential schools. I knew some of that from the last podcast. So it's an issue that I think needs to have some awareness brought to it. And this was a good vehicle to do that.
Toby, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down on Missing and Murdered Finding Cleo from the CBC?
I think of the podcasts we've listened to, this is probably the most emotionally resonant of them. And I think in a way, like you were talking about how you don't like grief porn. I really don't like grief porn, but this is not that.
No, I agree.
This is telling a story that's illustrative of a much, much bigger story. Sometimes I talk about like, what's the point? Why is this a podcast? And it's just so clear in this one what it is. A big thumbs up for me. I think it's really a top podcast among the ones we've listened to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm giving it a big thumbs up too. If we were doing letter grading, I would say this is very close to an A. There is just a whole lot of there in terms of what the story is about on its surface, which is the mystery of finding Cleo, and then below the surface, which actually to me is really what the show is about. I, as Toby mentioned, am not a fan of overly focusing on impact, overly focusing on victims, overly focusing on grief. In this show, it's exactly what we need. I have found myself getting very emotional while listening in a way that is good for me. As somebody who is learning something, somebody who's connecting with strangers who I'll never meet. This show, when it's at its best, does what only audio can do, which is take you to places and put you in front of people and put you in situations you would never otherwise be in, and you feel immersed in them. You feel like it's very intimate, and we have an extremely likable and compassionate and talented journalist and storyteller doing the work. And I like and respect Connie so much. Never met her in person, but this show makes me feel like I know her, and that is the hallmark of good storytelling. So big thumbs up for me. What about you, Kevin?
I'm also a thumbs up. I do have some issues with some of the writing that we've gone over. However, I do think this is a great investigative job that she's done. Again, we're in the spoiler-free section here, but I'm just going to say from the start, when she says we got a name, we don't really have a date of birth. We don't really know where she went or how she died. I'm kind of like, why are you exploring this? This is going nowhere. And so the story that they are able to tell from there on out, and the way they're able to weave it into sort of the historical narrative about this time in Canadian history, which to say a lot of us don't know much about.
Yeah.
It's very enlightening, and it's a good way of sort of bringing the two things together because one enhances the other. So
someone really does know something.
So I'm a thumbs up. This is a really sharp sounding podcast. Just like you will be a sharp looking person when you wear your clothes from Le Tote. All right, look what I have here.
That is a very strange transition.
I'm reaching in. What is this, Rebecca?
That is my bag from Le Tote.
Le Tote. Let's see what this is. Remember, Le Tote is the delivery service where you're for just about $59 a month.
This is real.
You can get great clothes like this.
Emerald green cardigan. Emerald green is the color of the year, by the way.
Uh-huh.
I wore this sweater yesterday.
All right, let's see. What are these pants?
They are burgundy, jean leggings. Very cute. Very cute. Yep, I'm going to wear them tomorrow.
Very good. All right. Reaching in, pulling this out. What do we got here?
It's like a magical mystery bag.
Beautiful short-sleeved mock turtleneck, black, very sleek, with this cardigan and these burgundy leggings. And what's not in there is the beautiful silver bracelet, which I am keeping and not sending back.
There's another piece of jewelry.
Yep, there's another piece of jewelry, a little necklace that I am sending back. I wore it once, wonderful, but I'm keeping the bracelet, not sending it back.
Right. These are all fantastic clothes. Remember, and they're picked not at random. It's because Rebecca worked with her fashion team.
Yeah, and they know what I like because they know what I send back and they know what I keep.
That's right. It's the easiest thing to do. It's like getting a new wardrobe.
Every week.
Every week. Go to letote.com. That's LETOTE.com to get started. Enter promo code CRIME at checkout to get 50% off your first month. Get a bag of clothes like Rebecca does. From there, you'll get your complimentary customized tote within days. You wear it all, and when you're done, just return the rest in the mail.
You don't even need to wash it. Just stick it in the envelope and
just
send it back.
Stick it right in there. You folded it nice, though. They'll start preparing your next tote immediately. And again, that's letote.com. Enter the code CRIME, and always have something new to wear.
The Letote boxes, by the way, double as like the best makeshift cat beds that I have ever seen. And I'm starting to look like an episode of Hoarders because I probably have about 10 of these things around the house because my cats love them so much, along with the little tissue paper that comes in them. So, there's more to Letote than just the clothes.
All right. That's not weird at all.
Is that something else you can cut out and not send to the advertisers? They don't always say that.
That's
okay.
What else you got,
I've taken pictures of them.
Well, when you want to look sharp, you want to look good in front of your computer, and that's why Felix Gray glasses are a great utilitarian and fashion-forward thing for those of us who spend their days in front of screens.
Like me.
Yeah, Felix Gray's lenses are specially designed to filter blue light and eliminate glare from screens. Those are the two main culprits of digital eye strain. So I gave a pair of Felix Gray glasses to our daughter Lily.
Yep, she loves them. She uses them all the time.
Yeah, now she doesn't need to wear glasses, but she likes them a lot. They look good on her.
Yeah.
She's wearing them all the time when she's in school, but using a computer.
Yeah.
They look really great, and they do work. They are handcrafted from premium Italian acetate, the same stuff that Versace uses. So they seriously look good. All orders are free shipping and free returns. So you've got nothing to lose except that annoying eye strain.
And you gain a little glasses wardrobe while you're at it.
They come in both non-prescription and reading lenses, and prescription lenses are in the works. Give your eyes the break they deserve. Go to felixgrayglasses.com/crime to try a pair of Felix Gray computer glasses and discover a smarter way to work. That's felixgrayglasses.com/crime. felixgrayglasses.com/crime.
Crime. Now it's time for my favorite part of this podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. Thanks to our good friend, Sarah Plord, who tweets as Rude Parasol for alerting us to this must-do crime of the week. When she found the Tinder app on her boyfriend's phone, Emily Javier decided she would kill him. She waited for him to fall asleep and then attacked him with a samurai sword she had purchased and then taped to the side of their bed. Alex Lavelle woke to his girlfriend hacking away at him. But Alex, who also goes by, quote, Biggie, had spent many of his 29 years playing video games and watching kung fu movies. So he blocked some shots and wrapped his attacker up before she fled. Quote, I've been preparing my whole life for something like this, he told the Oregonian, crediting his 12-hour-a-day bouts of virtual video game combat. In fact, he spends so much time playing video games that he even claims he doesn't have time to cheat on his girlfriend. Quote, she obviously didn't want anyone else to have me, so samurai sword.
So samurai sword.
Javier has pled not guilty to first-degree attempted murder charges. Biggie sustained several wounds from head to toe, and doctors reattached 3 of his fingers. But he's found the whole incident to be very life-affirming. Quote, I was just so proud for beating this samurai wannabe crazy lady with hate in her heart, he said. I've played all the sports, won big games, landed some decent tricks on my snowboard, and this was better.
Oh, God.
So here's my question for you, panel. What secret power did you develop throughout your life or perhaps as a kid that you would wield in the face of extreme danger. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
I wouldn't say it's the most exciting thing, but, I grew up on a farm, so I learned to drive a tractor. And as we're gearing up for yet another nor'easter here, like the fourth one in 3 weeks.
Yep.
It's come in very handy as an adult. Storms could be deadly. We had one like 3 years ago when I was trapped, in like 3 feet of snow, and I plowed out with the tractor. So that's potentially life-saving.
You could be like in The Shining, right? Remember in The Shining when they escaped in that snowcat?
I mean, I almost had to drive my tractor to the polls last week to vote,
What about you, Toby? What secret power you developed as a kid could you wield in the face of extreme danger?
I'm not sure how effective it would be in extreme danger, but I can take a grape and throw it really high in the air and catch it in my mouth.
Oh.
So potentially that would be distracting or something.
Yeah, no, that's really, really
like you
good.
do a couple of those, so you throw one really high, and while he's watching it, you just run. I guess that's my answer.
What about you, Kevin? What secret power did you develop as a kid that you could wield in the face of extreme danger?
If I was being attacked, I could pop a zit and get the pus right in the guy's eye.
Wow. God.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a power?
Like a squid.
I don't think I'm going to recover from that.
You've been training your whole life for that?
I've been training my whole life just for that. Crazy samurai lady with hate in her heart.
We should probably wrap things up on that note. Laura Bricker, before we close the show, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We have a dog of the week this week.
My favorite animal.
And it is a local New Hampshire dog.
Toby's booing.
Tweeted out by the great Jason Schreiber. I thought he wrote the story, but he did not. It was in the Union Leader. A Portsmouth, New Hampshire dog has become an internet star for having human-like features.
I've seen that
Yogi,
dog with the human face.
Yes, Yogi, a 1-year-old Shih Tzu poodle mix, caught the attention of social media companies because his picture ended up on Reddit. His owner, Chantel, has been interviewed this week by People Magazine and Inside Edition. She didn't realize how human Yogi looked until her friends pointed it out. She likes the online comparison to Nicolas Cage dressed up like an Ewok the most, as far as the comparison. Meanwhile, a local veterinarian in New Hampshire.
I just
see it. It's
I
so
just
funny.
showed Kevin the photo. It looks like one of those like mashup
Computer
photos.
mashup,
Yes,
yes.
of a
It
human's
doesn't even
face and a
look
dog's
real.
face. Yes.
So, according to veterinarian Alan Tucker at the Daniel Webster Animal Hospital in Bedford, New Hampshire, some breeds of dogs can be groomed to look more like humans. Quote, a lot of it depends on how you trim hair and face. So, this picture is hysterical. It was some good news this week in the midst of, like I said, Snowmageddon. And I think you guys should try this with your dogs.
Yeah, no, because that picture is creepy AF. I have to say, I actually saw that on Reddit and I didn't realize this was a New Hampshire person. I'm thrilled that this is a New Hampshire dog. We can claim it for our home state. Kevin, does that dog not look superhuman?
Absolutely. We got to get Sean McDonald and Amy Cavino on this. Get the TV station over there and do a whole Chronicle episode about him.
I think that one or both of them might listen to this show, so maybe they'll take that idea and run with it.
I don't think they listen this long.
All right, Laura Bricker, if people want to send their human-like dogs and cats to you for consideration as Cat of the Week, how can they find you on Twitter?
At Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, if people want to tweet to you, maybe get you to take a video or photo of yourself catching a high-tossed grape in the air in your mouth, how can they find you online?
It's at TobyBallNH, and I'm not sure I heard right. Did you say that you can breed dogs to look more like humans?
You can groom them.
Trim their hair.
Oh, groom them.
Oh, God, Toby.
Yes.
How would you breed? Never mind.
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. I was hoping I'd misheard. I guess I had.
That would be one unhappy pug, I'll tell you.
Kevin Flynn, if people want to reach out to you and give you their unsolicited dermatological tips, how can they find you on Twitter?
I'm at Aquaman, bitches. Vote! Vote, bitches!
Vote in the Podcast Madness finals of the Podcast Madness bracket. We really think, I don't think we know we're not a better podcast than This American Life, but we could beat them if everyone votes at discoverpods.com.
Be a good flounder. Go vote.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Reb Lavoie. Tweet to our show at Crime Writers On and join the fine folks in the official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group, or leave a comment on our regular Facebook page. Subscribe now to get exclusive ad-free content from StitcherPremium.com/crime. And of course, sign up for the new Toby Ball Run Patreon. At any amount, you can support the show at Partners in Crime Media on Patreon. If you love the show or any of our other shows, tell a friend. Leave a review on iTunes. It makes a difference. Our theme song was performed by Rocksteady Freddie and the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble. And this show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, formerly known as Studio C. But it's really just a closet in our basement, now wallpapered with printouts of a certain article by Slate. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. Let's play charades on mic, shall we? Okay, go ahead. You do a charade.
All right.
A book. 3 words. First word. Grapes of Wrath. Okay, do another one.
Right,
You're so good at charades.
All right.
A movie. 2 words. First word. 2 syllables. First syllable. 4. Second syllable. Sleep. Dream. Rest. Yawn. Rest. Forrest Gump.
Yes!
Why didn't you just act out Forrest Gump?
This was better to do that.
Partners in Crime Media.
Meet Namely, the all-in-one HR, payroll, and benefits software employees love to use. Clock in, schedule vacation, and more from your desk or on the go. Plus, use the social feed to share company news and give shout-outs for a job well done. Over 1,000 companies use Namely every day. Get a free demo by visiting namely.com/crime.
Crime.
That's namely.com/crime. Build a better workplace with Namely.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.